Breaking. This was never supposed to happen this far from the war. Deep in the Mediterranean, thousands of kilometers from Ukraine's front lines, a silent operation was already unfolding, and Moscow had no idea it had been surrounded. What Russia believed was a secure corridor for its oil intelligence and most protected operatives was in reality a carefully constructed trap. Because Ukraine didn't just defend its coastline anymore, it exported the battlefield. Along the Libyan coast, a covert network had taken shape, quiet, patient, and deadly precise, designed to strike at the exact moment when Russia felt untouchable. At the center of it all was a man who believed he was invisible, General Averyanov, one of the Kremlin's most shadowy figures, now unknowingly trapped inside a floating steel cage with no escape. What followed was not a naval clash, it was a calculated dismantling of Russia's reach in the Mediterranean. Energy routes, covert operations, and strategic influence were hit all at once in a synchronized strike that turned distance into a liability and exposure into a weapon. And the most dangerous part? This operation proved that nowhere is out of reach, and the war, once thought contained, is already spreading. The first target was the Russian oil tanker Kendall sailing quietly along the Greece to Libya route. From the outside, the ship looked like just another ordinary old and rusty vessel belonging to that infamous shadow fleet Russia had built to dodge Western sanctions. But on that dark night, the cargo the ship carried was far more dangerous, far more secret, and far more vital to the Kremlin than any barrels of oil. According to an exclusive investigation by RFI based on intelligence sources in Libya, who requested anonymity, the tanker's true cargo was none other than a high-value target of Ukraine itself. General Averyanov, one of the top officials in Russia's military intelligence agency, the GRU. Averyanov was no ordinary name, whispered in the corridors of Moscow. He was the former commander of Unit 29155, the legendary covert unit responsible for the GRU's bloodiest sabotage assassination and destabilization operations abroad. From the infamous Skripal poisoning that shook the world in the United Kingdom, to the ammunition depot explosions in Bulgaria and the audacious coup attempt in Montenegro, the list of his operations was long and ruthless. The Russian intelligence general was known as the de facto mastermind behind countless shadowy missions that rattled Europe and fueled Putin's hybrid war machine. In recent times, Averyanov's status had risen even further. He had been appointed the top executive in charge of operations for the Africa Corps, which rose from the ashes of the former Wagner Group, and he had begun to play an active shadowy role on the Libyan stage. This elite general was traveling in the guise of a simple sailor to avoid detection by Western intelligence and to move quietly through the waters of the Mediterranean. According to RFI, the general was not alone on that ship. Approximately 10 high-ranking Russian intelligence officers accompanied him, believed to be coordinating sensitive operations across Africa and the Middle East. Ukrainian military intelligence had already deciphered this seemingly flawless concealment plan and locked onto its target with cold precision. A drone launched from a secret Ukrainian base in Misrata struck the tanker with a fatal hit approximately 250 kilometers off the Libyan coast. The attack was so intense and so precise that the massive tanker was rendered inoperable in seconds. RFI's field sources reported that 2 people were killed and 7 seriously injured in this flawless assassination operation. However, the most shocking claim whispered by Libyan sources sending shockwaves through diplomatic corridors worldwide was that one of those eliminated was none other than General Averyanov himself. This was not only the first attack in history targeting a Shadow Fleet tanker in the Mediterranean waters, but also an asymmetric masterstroke that struck directly at the heart of Putin's top intelligence network. Immediately following the attack on April 3rd to 4th, 2026, the Russian embassy in Libya was forced to issue an official denial, claiming the general was alive. RFI immediately updated its report on its website under the headline, "Debunking the Denial." Russia's frantic and unprecedented diplomatic denial was interpreted by international observers as a major cover-up effort and a desperate move to hide the shame of yet another humiliating failure. The hatred between the two sides burned brighter than ever. Ukraine had reached across the sea to eliminate one of Putin's most protected shadows, proving that no distance could protect the architects of Russian aggression. Even as the shockwaves from this historic assassination attempt and that first heavy blow to the Shadow fleet had not yet subsided, Ukraine did not pause for a single moment. It pressed the button for a second, far more destructive move. Once again, RFI's detailed reports have uncovered not only this attack, which took place between March 3rd and 4th, and whose full details are emerging today, but also a different operation that showcased Ukraine's growing reach. This time the target was not intelligence agents, but the massive Russian LNG tanker, Arctic Metagas, en route from Murmansk to Egypt's Port Said, directly funding the Russian war machine. Carrying a full 61,000 tons of liquefied natural gas, this floating potential bomb was squarely in the crosshairs of Ukraine's state-of-the-art targeting system. Launched from the Zawiya base near the Libyan coast, Ukraine's deadly maritime specter, the Mura V5 unmanned surface vessel, targeted the tanker's vital engine room directly. In the moment of the massive explosion, the vessel's hull split open. The tanker began taking on water rapidly. A fierce fire erupted and the ship's propulsion system was completely disabled. The crew was rescued at the last possible moment, but the massive tanker, engulfed in flames, drifted uncontrollably for hours in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea between Libya and Malta. The blast lit up the night sky, sending thick black smoke rolling across the waves and delivering a devastating message that Russia's energy lifeline was now under direct fire. All these successive attacks were the clearest indication that following the Black Sea, the Mediterranean has also ceased to be a safe backyard for Russia and has instead turned into a bloody hunting ground where Ukrainian drones strike with ruthless efficiency. So how did Ukraine, which is fighting a war of survival in the Black Sea, become capable of conducting such complex, high-profile, and strategic operations in the Mediterranean, thousands of kilometers away? United 24 shed light on this mystery by bringing an agreement signed behind closed diplomatic doors to the global agenda in early April. In October 2025, a historic agreement was reached between the Ukrainian state and the Tripoli-based government of Prime Minister Abdulhamid Dbeibeh that would influence the course of the war. Ukraine's highly capable military attaché in Algeria, General Andriy Bayuk, personally conducted these secret and risky negotiations with the Tripoli government under strict confidentiality. Under this agreement, Libya would provide Ukraine with strategic bases on its sovereign territory to launch attacks against Russian ships and targets. In return, the Kyiv administration would provide elite training to Libyan soldiers on the use of drones, the backbone of modern warfare. And in the long term, critical arms sales would be carried out along with significant investments in Libya's struggling post-war oil sector. This was a perfectly crafted win-win formula for both sides at the diplomatic table. The Dbeibeh government would add modern drone technology capable of changing the rules of the game to its arsenal, countering the anti-Russian power balance backed by Khalifa Haftar, who controls the country's east. Ukraine, meanwhile, would gain an invaluable forward base to strike at Russia's Mediterranean energy corridor, through which Moscow bypasses Europe to access the world and its logistical arteries extending into Africa. The agreement was put into action before the ink had even dried. As confirmed by RFI, over 200 elite Ukrainian officers, intelligence agents, and military experts were quietly deployed to the western Libyan coast. This covert deployment served as the first and most significant signal granting Ukraine the ability to directly target Russian oil tankers off the Libyan coast. even a glance at the map reveals the incredible geostrategic advantage Kiev had secured. Libya stretches like a massive wall along the southern coast of the Mediterranean. A massive Russian LNG tanker, departing from the icy waters of Murmansk, must pass right off the coast of Libya through this new danger zone, whether it wants to or not, as it heads toward Egypt. Similarly, a fully loaded oil tanker setting sail from Novorossiysk in the Black Sea is bound for the warm waters of India, and its fate again depends on navigating these waters. In other words, Ukraine had secured a perfectly positioned forward operational base from which it could reach these massive Russian tankers thousands of kilometers away from its own home waters in the Black Sea and set an ambush for them. War-torn and fragmented Libya had become that deadly base on this strategic chessboard. Deep in the Mediterranean, thousands of kilometers from Ukraine's front lines, a silent operation was already unfolding, and Moscow had no idea it had been surrounded. What Russia believed was a secure corridor for its oil intelligence and strategic assets was in reality a carefully constructed trap. Because Ukraine didn't just defend its coastline anymore, it exported the battlefield. Along the Libyan coast, a covert network had taken shape, quiet, patient, and deadly precise, waiting for the exact moment Russia felt untouchable. At the center of this unfolding nightmare was one of the Kremlin's most shadowy figures, now unknowingly trapped inside a floating steel fortress with no escape. What followed was not a traditional naval clash, but a calculated dismantling of Russia's Mediterranean presence. Its energy routes, covert operations, and strategic influence struck simultaneously in a synchronized collapse. At the heart of this shift lies a weapon that has already rewritten naval warfare, the Mura V5, a low-profile, radar-evading unmanned surface drone. Capable of traveling over 800 kilometers, carrying 300 kilograms of explosives, and guided by AI and real-time satellite communication. It moves like a ghost across the water, silent, invisible, and lethal. And when it strikes targets worth hundreds of millions disappear in seconds, while the cost of the weapon itself remains shockingly low. This is not just warfare, it is economic destruction engineered with precision. Russia's response has been loud, but largely powerless. With its naval presence in the Mediterranean collapsing after the loss of key bases and infrastructure, Moscow no longer has the capacity to fully protect its ships or maintain control of its maritime lifelines. What once took decades to build is now unraveling at unprecedented speed. And this is the real turning point. Distance no longer guarantees safety. The battlefield is no longer fixed, and the war that once seemed contained is now expanding into zones Russia never expected to defend. The question now is simple and dangerous. If Ukraine can reach this far, where will the next strike happen? Click subscribe now. Don't miss a single moment of this historic journey. Your time is valuable. We promise analyses as sharp as reality itself. Stay vigilant, stay informed. We'll see you in the next video. Disclaimer: this video contains content generated or supported in whole or in part by artificial intelligence. This material is intended solely for simulation, illustration, and entertainment purposes. It does not represent real-world events, nor does it constitute political or military advice or verified information. Certain elements may be fictional, dramatized, or inaccurate. Viewers should not rely on this video as a credible source of information or as a basis for real-world decision-making.